Hi everyone, my name is Isabella Briones and I'll be presenting my senior STEAM capstone project titled Youth for Earth Conference. So my essential question that sort of guided me throughout this entire process was, how can I effectively educate and provide resources for high school students interested in creating climate action? So for me personally, my objectives were pretty clear from the start. I wanted to provide resources for those students who are interested in going into environmental fields, whether that's sustainable marketing or environmental engineering. There's truly a field for everyone out there. And I did this through connecting students with business professionals, as you'll see later in the presentation. And like any event having to do with Earth at the core, my main goal was to promote awareness about climate change and kind of instill in my students that they do have the power to make a tangible impact, especially on the local level. So being in STEAM, my mentor was an outside mentor. His name was David Arujo. There's a picture of us. He works at Veolia, which is an environmental solutions and services company. He was extremely helpful, and he actually sponsored the conference, or his company did, and he actually ran his own workshop. So he has a lot of experience with education and outreach in general, specifically 12 years of experience, so he was extremely valuable for me. Moving on to my timeline, I have 2 slides for my timeline. I'm not going to explain them all just because I don't have the time, but I sort of broke it down into 3 chunks. So for the summer, I kind of called it my brainstorming phase. So I just wanted to get all my ideas out there, get my bad ideas out there, get my good ideas out there. And then in the fall, from September to November, it was more of the heavy lifting phase. So this is where I did all my cold emailing for my presentations, my sponsorships, my money, my private grant funds. So all of the really heavy duty stuff was the fall. So fall was very busy. And then there's a lag. Okay, there we go. And then in the winter, I just like to call it the finishing touches phase. So this is all the administrative work that happened in the background leading up to February 27th. So all the final query forms, final emailing, Zoom meetings, meetings with Mr. Nash, getting all the swag bag stuff done. So February was extremely busy, but I really liked it, so. One of the first things that I did was branding. So branding was really important for me, and I learned that really early on through my research reports. I wanted my conference to be recognizable. So I utilized Canva like a lot of other students, and I did 2 fonts, 3 colors, and 3 logos. So although it may seem a bit simplistic, simplicity is what I went for because I wanted someone to look at the logo and say, I know exactly what that is. And I think I accomplished that. After building my branding, I knew I needed to figure out exactly how many students were going to be attending, so I focused on the registration. I knew it would be extremely difficult to get a bunch of students, but I tried my best. So I cold emailed about every principal, vice principal, advisor, school counselor, any person's email that was public information, I emailed them. And I got really good response. And then after that, they had to fill out the primary registration, which was simply saying, I'm interested. And then the secondary registration was saying exactly how many students, their names, their emails, as well as their photography permission. So this is the first and this is the second. And I needed photography permission because Andrew Morse was taking the photos. From that, I got 7 schools: Framingham, Medfield, Millis, Norwood, Wayland, Wellesley, and Westboro. So a very good mix there. And then from those 7 schools, we had around 115 students total, give or take. Some were sick, some weren't there. And these were either from their school's environmental club or environmental science class. Just going back to those students that already had an interest in the environment is what I went for. And then I also want to point out the number 18 because I had 18 outside advisors and presenters, and they all required query forms, which are background checks. And that was one of the most tedious and time-consuming process, just me and Miss Sarney going constantly back and forth over email. Here's the agenda. Again, I used Canva, super easy, I recommend. And I kind of spaced out all my time chunks on here. This was attached to about every single email I sent when I was recruiting presenters because I needed them to see what the event was. So if you don't know, the conference took place on February 27th, 2025 from 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. So it was an in-school field trip for my environmental action members and then an out-of-school field trip for everyone else. Although Millis is fairly small, it worked out pretty well. We mostly stayed in the auditorium and then we kind of went off to other rooms. And then other than the events, we had a lunch block where I provided snack for Mr. Fallon in the cafeteria. And then Emma Powers, another senior STEAM scholar, presented her mural at the end. So now going on to my presentations and workshops, these were my more professional looking PDFs, I guess you could say. And I had a total of 9 presenters and workshoppers. So my keynote speaker was Cindy Fitzgibbon, who's the chief meteorologist of WCVB Storm Team 5. She was awesome. She lives in Natick, so I knew she was pretty local, and I just cold emailed her out of the blue, and she responded, so I got lucky. The students loved her, and she presented about how climate change is affecting the seasons in Boston, specifically the Metro West area, so it was super applicable to all of us. And then my last three presentations were from Boston University's Institute of Global Sustainability, and they're all PhD students. Again, the same as Cindy, I just cold emailed their director of communications. I found her email online, and it worked. And I ended up with three very different PhD students. So Farbin, Emily, and Brian each do their own research in their own specific niches. And it was really cool to see their different paths on getting here. Farbin was actually born in Bangladesh. Emily and Brian were born in the United States, but it was really cool to see how they could end up in the same place through such different backgrounds. Oh, here's some photos. They were nice enough to take a photo with me. They're on the left. And now for, I think the students loved the workshop hour the best. I had a total of 5 workshops. I specifically wanted part of the day to be hands-on. I didn't want the students sitting in the auditorium all day. It's just not something that they would have liked. So I had the Charles River Watershed Association, Eversource, Veolia, which was David's company. Andrew Fiala, who's also a senior STEAM scholar, did part of a senior project for a workshop. And then I had Mass Audubon. As you can see, each one of the companies kind of specializes in their own environmental field. So I wanted to keep the topics very diverse. I wanted the students not to have any repeating topics. And then here are some images from each of the workshops. So that's 1, 2, 3, workshop 4, workshop 5. And I specifically pre-arranged the groups beforehand, and I made sure that students from each of the 7 schools were in each groups. So students from Wellesley were forced to interact with students from Millis, were forced to interact with students from Medfield, and so on and so forth. Because again, just going back to my main purpose of extending opportunities outside of just Millis. And then the last part of the day was the Earth Challenge. This was something I designed. It was sort of a little competition. Again, the groups, there were 10 groups, and all the students were dispersed, mixed without. I didn't want my friends just sticking with their friends and doing what they normally do. And as you can tell from the picture, I think the students really loved it, and they got to display their sketches at the end. And their objective was to design the most sustainable school possible, and kind of apply what they learned in their previous workshops. Moving on to the more administrative side of things. So I knew I was going to need money for the food, for the t-shirts, and just for other aspects of the conference. And I didn't want to fundraise. It was just going to be another added layer of stress on an already really big project. So I decided to go with sponsorships. I had 6. Again, these are my more professional looking PDFs that I would attach to emails. So I had 2 types of sponsorships. I had product sponsors, and then I had ad sponsors. So my 3 product sponsors were Beyond Good, Veolia, David's company, and then Custom Apparel and Medway. So in exchange for displaying their logo, they donated products for free or at a reduced price. This was all the chocolate that Beyond Good got me. That's like my dining room table. You can't even see it. And then this is the design I sent over to Custom Apparel. It does not look exactly like the logo just because it can only be in one color or it's just going to be too expensive. But Custom Apparel was nice enough to give me a reduced price on that. And then my ad sponsors, Veolia, again, they did both. And then I had Harrison Murphy Law, Alpine Environmental, and then Brown & Brown Insurance Company. They didn't really have any products per se, but they donated monetary donations to pay for conference expenses. And then here's the inside of the swag bags. I just wanted to give you guys a close-up. I would say the students definitely got a lot in just one bag, and all of it was wrapped up in those Eversource sling bags. I think the students really liked these booklets, especially Careers in Energy Efficiency. And then before I move on, I just want to touch on all behind-the-scenes work that not just I did, but also the administration did. So for technology, Mr. Bush, he really helped me out with the Wi-Fi, making sure all the rooms were equipped with the proper USB ports. Mr. Engler with the parking and the transportation, so reserving all those spots. Mr. Fallon, making sure everyone had lunch that day, and Ms. Sarney with the Corey forms. All of those people were extremely integral to my process. And then for post-conference happenings, so going back to my main objective, I wanted to cultivate a community not just based around one day. I wanted it to be long-lasting. And the way that I did that was by creating a website. So this website can be found on the Millis Public Schools website. And basically it has all the information you would need, including a contact list with every single presenter's email and LinkedIn. So I think it'll be extremely valuable for students in the future. And I've already connected with these people on LinkedIn as well. And then I also did a Google form, and you can see those results on the right. I think I got overall very positive feedback. Just quickly, the conference was also in the news because of Cindy Fitzgibbons and then on her Instagram, and I just thought that was cool, and I wanted to put that in there. For some successes and failures, I think overall the conference went extremely well considering all things. I learned how to create, plan, and manage a really large-scale event, and I definitely take that with me into the future. And students really connected on a different level. For some weaknesses and improvements, it took a long time between blocks, so from the workshops and the presentations, to kind of wrangle all the students together. So I would definitely put more time in between their blocks for that. And then for my vision of a graduate connection, I highlighted all of them, but I specifically want to focus on communication and character. So I was emailing so many people at once, and it just kind of showed the importance of keeping in contact, especially through technology. And then character, I want to focus on the Millis students, not just me, but I thought all of my club members really acted with maturity and professionalism. They welcomed all of the students into the building, showed them where the bathrooms were, and it just kind of showed that Millis really is a good school. This is my works cited. Thank you to everyone who helped me, and are there any questions?